Since the early 2010s, the world has been infatuated with the treacherous streets of Chicago. With drill music taking off at the start of the decade, artists like Chief Keef, Lil Durk, and G Herbo emerged, creating street bangers and birthing the newest hit genre in the gangster rap world. But sadly, drill has also spawned a subculture of crazy fans awaiting for the next body to drop, like some kind of twisted music-based reality show, with creators like DJ Academics reporting on the goings-on in Chicago's streets in his controversial series The War in Chirac, which despite being marred in controversy, ultimately put many of Chicago's up-and-coming drill rappers truly on the map. But in Chicago's South Side, this was all real life. Countless families were being torn apart day by day by the senseless violence, and in the next 10 years, the gang war behind drill music would also claim the lives of many of the scene's biggest rap stars. And no gang war in Chicago has been publicized as much as the infamous deadly feud between O-Block and their rivals Tukaville. Nowadays, these gangs are mostly known for their catalogue of drill bangers, but to fans of drill music, their dangerous members are more notorious for their activities in the streets and the bodies they may or may not have dropped. With many stories we've covered before telling the tragic tales of violence and murder on the streets of Chicago, but arguably one story in particular is possibly the most unique in all of Chicago drill history, and that's the story of Jakira K.I. Barnes, aka the gang girl who has been described by some as a teenage female gang assassin. Before I go any further into the story of K.I., I need to give you guys a very important content warning. This video will contain themes of violence, death, explicit language, and gang activity. Now, every effort has been made to censor this video in accordance with YouTube's advertiser and community guidelines, and as a result, this video you're watching will feature no swearing, no violence, no drug use, and no firearms. Even though those themes will come up, the real purpose of this video is an educational documentary providing authoritative news reporting on historic events in a journalistic context. I'm not making light of any of these situations, and I'm not just recycling tragedies into content or for money like some of those YouTube channels do. I genuinely care about the drill music scene, and I've done extensive research to try and bring you the truth behind the music. I am the #1 rap journalist when it comes to the entire UK, and when it comes to the topics of rap music, drill music, and gang culture surrounding the music, I am indeed a trusted authority on this topic. But that said, all of the opinions in this video are mine alone. Everything that's in this video has been taken from publicly available sources online and in print. Now, I'm not saying everything here definitely happened, but what I am saying is that things were said and theories exist. I might say somebody killed someone else and that these things were discussed on Reddit. I'm not definitely pointing the finger and saying they did it, but what I am saying is these are the things that people said around the topic of the video. And I'm not responsible for things that other people have said, but you can't deny that these things were said, and I'll be providing receipts for everything I discuss in this video. But with that said, me and my research team have made every effort we can to ensure the accuracy of our sources, but I'm not responsible for the content that third parties have put out there online. Also, any of the footage used in this video is covered under the doctrine of fair use, which means that I don't need anyone's permission to show you images, clips, or comments to prove these things actually happened. This video aims to educate the public on true cultural events that are socially significant, and I'm not using any more than is necessary to back up what I'm saying, and this video is really not a substitute for any of the things that I'm going to be talking about or showing you in this video. It's a completely unique piece of research with a unique purpose, and any efforts to censor my journalism using fake copyright claims or intimidation are unlawful and will be reported to the authorities. Now, because of the YouTube advertiser guidelines, but also just to save time, I tend to remove a lot of random details which don't even break YouTube's rules, but I feel like they're sometimes too long or boring or detailed to put in the public version of this video. So if you do want to see a director's cut of all of my biggest videos where I go in much more depth, please visit patreon.com/traplawross, where you can watch the director's cut of the video for just $2. And also, you'd be supporting the channel, as to be honest, some of my bigger investigations, especially from the start of this year, aren't necessarily profitable. I put my own money into developing my team and making these documentaries actually happen, and I'll be honest, I don't always make that money back from the YouTube monetization, unfortunately. So having a Patreon allows me to get additional support off the platform and continue making content that I really care about with integrity on the topics that are really important to me rather than chasing the algorithm. Your support makes it possible to keep making great quality videos like this for the second channel, so make sure that you show love to the Patreon and to the sponsor of today's video, because I know you always want something new to watch, and I'm on a journey to try and have videos out every single week on both of my channels this year. But if you're not interested in any of that, just hit the subscribe button, kick back, and get ready to hear one of the craziest stories ever told. Now, K.I. was once an innocent schoolgirl, but later turned to a cold-blooded shooter who allegedly had several shootings and murders attached to her name. But in the years since her death, many have pondered just how true the claim of KI, being age 17 with 17 bodies under her belt, actually were. KI is infamous in the drill culture for being one of the most feared and respected Tukaville members, all of this while being a teenage girl. And I'm not trying to offend anybody with this, but the truth is, in the male-dominated world of Chicago gang violence, one does have to wonder how this petite teenage girl managed to get so much respect on her block. She, just like countless other Chicago street figures, had been associated with several infamous hits, shooting at the ops and bragging about it all on Twitter for the whole world to see. But when assessing KI's story in more detail, it's clear to see that due to her extreme circumstances and countless losses that she took on the way, there was almost no hope for KI, leading her to an almost inevitable and violent end. Her story has gone on to be legendary in Chicago, spawning several news pieces about her unique life. There were rumours that she was the actual real-life version of the female hitwoman Snoop on the HBO fictional series The Wire, and she would even be the star of her very own A&E documentary after her passing, a documentary which curiously starred one of the biggest stars of drill music for very suspicious reasons. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the crazy story of STL's female menace, KI, and determine once and for all, was she really a female assassin with 17 bodies at age 17, or just a misunderstood and frustrated teenager who ended up becoming the poster child of Chicago gang violence?
Compare that reputation as a shy, timid girl with her reputation on the street, which was a shooter or a hitter or an assassin. She was known to her rivals as somebody who was willing to shoot first, ask questions later. It's all over the internet. In fact, on her own Twitter site, she called herself Taekwon Assassin. Taekwon was a friend of hers who was killed, and she vowed to avenge his death. The last time they had contact with her, they saw Jakira in an alley near 63rd and King Drive, which is kind of the borderline between her gang and another rival gang. And they thought that it was really unusual for her to be there. She was really putting herself at risk. She could have gotten shot there. And so one of the officials got out of the car and talked to her and offered her help, and she politely refused and she walked away. 2 months later, she was dead.
Before we go any further, I just want to give you guys a quick update on the channel, as well as tell you about today's sponsor, NordVPN, whose support is going to make it so that we have a lot more content to release on all 3 channels going forward. So NordVPN have made it their mission to strive to make the internet a better place than it is today, and they believe that it should be free from online threats, censorship, and surveillance. Now, as somebody that gets a lot of threats and is subject to a lot of censorship on the internet, I really need a product like NordVPN. If you're a fan of the channel, you'll already know, because of the documentaries I make, I've got a lot of ops and haters online trying to track me down, and I will never back down. So I have to use a VPN as much as possible to stay low-key on the internet. And with NordVPN, you can become safer online with just one single click. But the good thing about NordVPN is it directly helps me get better information for my videos, and making them simply wouldn't be possible without their support. One of the best things about NordVPN is it can help you access your favorite content from all over the world. So even when you're traveling, you can stay at home virtually and get the content that you need. But for me, working here in the UK on a lot of American news stories, often a lot of news articles about some of the most interesting cities like Chicago and Atlanta are actually location blocked. So I always use NordVPN to access the most important updates on things like the YSL case. I need my YSL Young Thug updates, okay? But with NordVPN, it actually makes it possible for you to get the content that you need. Also, Nord helps you stay safe from malware with Threat Protection Pro, which is a game-changing online threat prevention feature that checks files and websites for malicious content and protects your browsing experience. It's the fastest VPN on the planet, so I would recommend NordVPN. And most importantly, if you support them, it supports the channel. And I'm really trying to raise some funds at the moment to reinvest in my team as I continue my mission to drop weekly videos on both channels. We're a long way off right now, but we're trying to get there, and NordVPN is going to help us. So protect yourself online and help me grow the team by hitting the link in description and trying out NordVPN. You can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan by using my link. So go to nordvpn.com/trapmoreross and get started today. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and I would appreciate if you showed them some love. Thanks guys, and back to the video. Jakira Barnes, aka KI, was born on January the 21st, 1997 in the south side of Chicago. Jakira comes from a popular family in drill history, as many might know her half-brother, FBG Butter, often referred to as KI's twin due to their almost identical looks. Now, Butter has gone on to become a media personality in his own right, as well as having been a rapper, with him in recent years going viral on many different platforms, creating unmissable moments where he retold classic stories from his past in the streets of Chicago, including one crazy story where he had allegedly beaten up infamous O-Block rapper King Von on the bus back in the day.
Well, what was the situation that happened between you and King Von on the school bus?
He got into it with one of the guys at school. I guess they was in that shooting dice or whatever. Folks just told him like, shit, wait till we get out of school, I'm gonna have my little homie scratch you out. So when I came on the bus, folks like, man, whoop him, Butter. I'm like, man, Butter, tweaking, but Broski said whoop you, so I had to whoop him.
K.I. also had another brother nicknamed G.I. or G.I. Joe, and another brother named P.T. from a different area called Tay-Town, all of whom were gang affiliated and deep in the streets, likely normalizing the criminal lifestyle in her household growing up. K.I., much like countless other children in Chicago, was exposed to the extreme violence within the city during her infancy. In fact, her father was actually murdered before she'd even made it to 12 months old. Jakira shared an image of her father holding her as a baby, commenting, "I know I'd be better if you were in my life." A heartbreaking sentiment when considering the tragedies that would unfold in K.I.'s life in the following years. But following her father's death, K.I. managed to persevere and grow into a sweet and funny school graduate who was very popular and had a keen interest in music.
Her mom said she was a smart kid. She was kind of shy, even timid, some people said. I talked to people at the school who said it took a while for her to warm up to her classmates and to her teachers, but she had some initial discipline problems at the beginning and she got suspended. But after that, she was a good student, they said. So she graduated her 8th grade at Perspectives IIT Math and Science Academy.
But it was also around this age in her early teens where K.I. was dragged into the streets and the gangbanging lifestyle. The images from around that time give a clear depiction that Jakira's whole life had changed due to her extreme change in her appearance, from a seemingly innocent school graduate to a gang-rapping delinquent. She was often seen throwing up gang signs and dissing rival sets that were the opposition to her area, 63rd and St. Lawrence. Like here, Jakira can be seen throwing up the rakes, representing her membership of the Gangster Disciples, as well as dropping Ys, or displaying a Y upside down to diss opposing hoods, such as TYMB, who were close to STL's enemies O-Block around the 2010s. This change in her lifestyle began to affect her education and family environment. After the 8th grade, Jakira's school performance began to drop, with her regularly missing classes and taking issue with authority, even catching her first criminal case around this time for discharging a firearm. But thankfully, she was found not guilty after a witness who picked her out in a lineup curiously changed their story, likely due to pressures from other members of her STL gang.
In Science Academy, she went back there for her freshman year and things just did not work out. She had a really spotty attendance record, and the next thing you know, according to her mother, she was arrested for shooting a gun and wound up going into the juvenile justice system, and she essentially never really was a full-time student again.
K.I. clearly had picked up a fascination with guns and crime, which ultimately went on to become a pattern of behavior, judging by her gallery of mugshots online. According to Jakira's mother, at around age 12, she started to hang out with a different crowd, and she began to notice a change in Jakira from her attitude, appearance, and even the music she was interested in.
I want to say maybe at about age 12, I started seeing like a change, you know what I'm saying? Change in appearance, change in the group she was hanging with.
Specifically, she'd been hanging around with the Flyboy Gang, or FBG Collective, from STL or St. Lawrence Avenue, and she would later appear in music videos such as this one for the track Murder, being depicted in the video as a frontrunner for the gang, masked up and clutching a pistol. STL, which refers to the St. Lawrence Avenue, and have also been referred to as the St. Lawrence Boys, is a Gangster Disciple set located around 63rd and St. Lawrence Avenue, hence the nickname STL. This crew's only a short walk away from their mortal enemies based in the infamous Parkway Gardens, nowadays referred to as O-Block, the famous housing complex and Black Disciple affiliated gang set that produce icons in the drill music scene like Chief Keef and King Von, and also being famous for their deadly feud with St. Lawrence. Now, STL is also known for its close alignment to the nearby Eberhard Avenue, which reps the name EBT, with this group sometimes being collectively referred to as STL EBT. Both sets are closely linked up and often unite as one, as seen in an old clip where K.I. claims she's from STL but is posted up on EBT.
I'm from STL, but I be posted on EBT, bitch.
The street politics in Chicago's South Side are both incredibly complicated, with beefs and alliances being handed down from generation to generation, as the Black Disciples and Gangster Disciples had a deadly feud that goes back decades. But also, the beef in modern-day Chicago, in many ways, is very simple. as if you're from O Block or 64th, you'd likely just hate anybody from STL EBT or 63rd, and simply being from the wrong street could ultimately have you marked for death if you run into the opposition. And vice versa, if you catch one of your enemies, you're playing the deadly game of gang violence in Chicago, you may well be forced to kill or be killed in a split second. And sadly, KI was deep into this dynamic and ultimately found herself in the same lifestyle that likely resulted in her father's murder, repeating the same family cycle. Jakira's mother Chantel even mentions how she would attempt to get KI locked up or have her sent to mental institutions, hoping to put a stop to her behavior and gangster tendencies, but she would explain that the system can only do so much. When she reached the age of 14, KI's mother believed that she was too far gone and essentially left it in the Lord's hands. At just age 14, her own mother had given up hope for Jakira due to the lifestyle choices she was making at the time.
12, so I used to do stuff like try and get her locked up, take her down to Heart Grove mental institution, keep her for 30 days, try and do stuff like that, Then it kind of got to the point, because the system only can help you so much if they haven't actually done nothing. So kind of like at, say like 14, 15, it kind of started getting real rowdy type, like, you know what I'm saying? Where, I ain't gonna say I let her go, but I just kind of stayed prayed up and kind of put it in the Lord's hand. But at the same time, she was a child that was coming home every night. So I would talk to her, mention like, hey, this going on in the streets, this, that, and the other, and when she got to about that age, I want to say like 15-ish or so, that's when she got that I don't give a fuck attitude.
At such an impressionable age, for a young girl to be surrounded by pretty much all male gang members, this would obviously have a massive impact on Jakira's self-image, even potentially spawning issues with her gender identity and sexual orientation. Perhaps she was trying to find a new way to fit in with the male-dominated gang lifestyle she'd found herself in. As her mother explains in one interview, KI actually begun dressing like a boy and had started dating females. This is something her mother didn't necessarily agree with, but ultimately chose to accept it out of love for her child.
When she was, dressed like a boy, put on, or whatever, or start messing with females, I was like, oh, okay, so you trying to go this route, you know what I'm saying? I ain't knock her, for nothing she did. I ain't condone none of it neither. But if your child come to you and say, hey, I want to be this or that, you still gonna love that child. You gonna try and guide them the right way, but you still gonna love them no matter what they turn out to be.
In fact, it would seem like over the course of her life, KI was bisexual and actually dated both male and females. KI actually had a very interesting love life. When assessing her social media presence, we can see that she was romantically involved with several notable gang members. Somehow, KI seemed to have been associated with some of the most popular gangs and gangsters in Chicago, either through alleged murders, friendships, or even as a love interest. Interestingly, members from both sides of the war. She would even date Modell McCambry when she was around 13 years old. Modell was a member of STL and was famously gunned down by King Von, which is an eerie signal of foreshadowing considering what would happen years later. But in June 2010, Modell made several posts detailing his breakup from Jakira, explaining how he was so heartbroken over the situation, even claiming that Jakira was his everything and calling her his potential wife. Jakira would also date another member from STL called Tutu, who she was very close with, which we'll get into a little bit later. But interestingly enough, KI also dated a known shooter from the other side, McAdoo from 600, who was actually very close to O Block, and STL would have definitely considered him and 600 mortal enemies. Pictures of the two would surface together online, with Mac and KI appearing together and posing for the camera like a couple. Then, just a few years later, McAdoo would end up being considered one of the deadliest members from that very gang 600 that rivals KI's. Now, you can go and check out my 6-hour video on his gang 600 if you want to learn the whole story. But anyway, nothing more can really be found about that relationship. But what it does show is that before being involved in a deadly street war, these so-called shooters were once just innocent kids having fun and going about their lives. Sadly, in just a few years, street politics would make them mortal enemies. These once partners would likely try and kill each other anytime they had the chance. Now, KI's story is really a one-of-a-kind considering her gender. Being a so-called shooter as a female has spawned many debates online, specifically in the r/Chiracology subreddit, where users were absolutely dumbfounded at the prospect of a female gangster. But many comments seem to agree that KI was different from the average female gangster. The Chicago Sun-Times actually posted an article on KI after her story rose to fame in the mid-2010s. In the article, they actually discussed the unusual role that KI played in the STL sets, as it's not unheard of for females to be involved in street gangs, often carrying out tasks like hiding weapons, setting up rivals, maybe even being an accomplice in planning murders, but KI was different. By all accounts, she was a certified shooter for the gang, putting herself in the firing line and even allegedly committing first-hand murders on their opposition. Jakaya was given the street name KI as an abbreviation of her government name, but she was also given the nickname Lil Snoop due to her likeness in appearance and temperament to the female hitter in HBO's series The Wire. No doubt her tough persona and deadliness in the streets likely convinced many people she was indeed a real-life Snoop. By being the only female in her clique, it's likely that KI would go even harder with her antics, almost to prove a point that she should be considered as cold-blooded as any other member, regardless of her gender. KI was 10 toes deep in these gang feuds, and during a short stint of activity, she would suffer many losses of her close friends, which led her on a spree of revenge and hatred against STL's rivals. KI was very close with an STL member named Shondale Gregory, aka Tuka. Allegedly, KI was even with Tuka on the day that he died, January the 12th, 2011. Tuka was standing at the bus stop near the corner of St. Lawrence Avenue and 63rd Street around 6:45 p.m. Police would say that a man approached Tuka and two friends, asking them when the bus was coming. He then moved behind the bus shelter and shot Tuka once. Tuka would stagger to a nearby trash can, where he was then shot 3 more times and left dead at the scene, losing his life at the young age of 15 years old. According to KI's older brother, FBG Butter, both siblings considered Tuka as a best friend. KI was there and witnessed the shooting happen, with her just being 14 years old at the time. Butter claims that KI knew an O-Block member named O.D. Perry was the one responsible for the murder.
Tuka ain't related to us for real, but you know, that's our brother, gang.
Okay, so did she see Tuka get killed?
Yeah, her look, her look, it was her G.I. Joe. That's why I knew exactly who killed Tuka right away, because it was so many people out there who walked up and only killed Tuka, only shot Tuka.
Right, he was at a bus stop.
Yeah, he's at the bus stop. They on a bus stop 6 deep.
With Butter further going on to say that Tuka was killed following a fight between the two at a high school where Tuka had apparently choked O.D. Perry against a locker, causing O.D. to later find him and kill him.
Over a fight. They say O.D. and Tuka had a fight earlier that day at school. They both was going to win their feelings. Tuka's supposed to choke O.D. up, choked him to the locker, right? They both on the wrestling team type. With Tuka was on the wrestling team, I think O.D. was supposed to be hooping for the P. They say folks supposed to choke him up because Roro from TYMB was going there too. And he came back later that day and killed Tuka. Tuka literally died later that day after the fight. That's why this is like, it wasn't hard to put the pieces together.
Tuka's death was a massive loss for STL, as he was beloved by his gang brethren, and in Tuka's honor, STL would rename their area and their gang Tukaville. People who knew Tuka would oddly start saying that they were smoking on Tuka, which these days is a sign of disrespect to dead ops. However, back then, this would have originally been seen as a sign of respect, similar to pouring out liquor for a dead loved one. Jakira's Twitter still has posts to this day saying that she's smoking on Tuka in his memory. This trend was started by Tupac and his crew The Outlaws after a song called Black Jesus, where Pac rapped, "We die clutching glasses, filled with liquor, bombastic, cremated, last wishes, my boys smoke my ashes." The Outlaws would apparently take his request seriously and would indeed smoke Tupac's ashes after his death at a memorial for him in 1996.
Giving them our own, farewell, and that night, I forgot which one of us came up with it. They had his ashes and
I came up with that. If you listen to Black Jesus, he said, "Last wishes, smoke my ashes."
No doubt.
You know what I mean? So that was a request. You know what I mean, that he had. Now, how serious he was about it, we took the serious.
Now, after Tuka's death, KI could be seen wearing t-shirts that read RIP Tuka, and although the death of Tuka was a major hit to STL, they chose not to let this slide, as his death was being terribly mocked by rivals who would actually repost a picture of Tuka laying in a casket, writing disrespectful captions on it and posting it on social media. The STL gang believed that O.D. Perry from Wick City, later renamed O-Block, was responsible for killing Tuka, so 8 months later, they would allegedly get their payback. At around 11:35 PM on August the 10th, 2011, the supposed shooter of Tuka, 20-year-old O.D. Perry, was in the Parkway Gardens neighborhood at 64th Street and King Drive. An assailant would open fire at O.D. Perry, hitting him once in the neck, and he would later be pronounced dead at hospital. It was known that the killing was indeed revenge for the death of Tuka, and it would even take place on what would have been Tuka's 16th birthday, and on the very same night that FBG members were filming the video FBG Duck's song Freestyle, where KI can actually be seen stood right next to Duck in the video. Now, STL must have been in high spirits after filming the video and clearly felt bloodthirsty enough to murder an O-Block member right near Parkway Garden. Just like how Tuka's death would rename STL Tukaville in OD's memory, the Wick City Black Disciples would rename Parkway Gardens as O-Block, a block that Chief Keef and King Von would later immortalize in their music. O.D. Perry, just like Tuka, was beloved in Parkway Gardens, and his name has now gone on to be associated with the most popular gang in drill history. Judging by the images available of OD, he was definitely a major player in the gang who kept several guns, one of these being his notorious Magnum revolver. Now, while it's never been definitively proven who killed O.D. Perry, at the time, the word on the street was that this murder was indeed the work of KI herself. Curiously, she had begun posing with a similar revolver that O.D. was known to carry after his death, which spawned rumors that it was KI who actually took the revolver after killing O.D., carried it around as a badge of honor. These rumors have apparently been spawned from people like Lil J, who apparently shared the following image along with a caption, "Gang, shout out to them twins who made O-Block, #seriously," referring to KI and her older brother FBG Butter, with this also being supported by Marvel FBG Wooski Williams, who also made a tweet indicating that KI and Butter were indeed the twins that made the O, even specifically atting them. In 2024, FBG Butter appeared on Vlad TV and even admitted that it was indeed KI who killed O.D. Perry. He would also claim that the murder is on camera and people have seen the footage.
Well, the story goes that she killed someone at 14 as revenge over Tuka. That's what they say.
Man, OD got his black.
Right. Well, O.D. Perry got killed at one point.
Sheroid,
And they're saying that
Platoon, Junior.
they're saying that she was the shooter. That's the rumor.
I mean, it's footage. It's actually it's a video.
Of O.D. Perry getting killed?
Yeah.
Now, a later Freedom of Information request did reveal that Rodney Boss Trail Stewart and Jakira K.I. Barnes were indeed suspected as offenders in this murder, but the footage has never been released. This report does add serious weight to the claims that K.I. may well have killed O.D. Perry, with this actually coming after an informant named them as the shooters in 2016. But a lot of people have still debated this and have suggested that it indeed was not K.I. that killed O.D. Perry, but for me to break all of that down, it would just, that's a whole other video. Interestingly though, around this time, Chief Keef from O-Block's career would start taking off. He would go on to flip the phrase "smoking on Tuka" in his songs to be used in a more mocking tone to disrespect his rivals in Tukaville, as well as posting tweets and making songs that diss Tuka, like his song John Madden from all the way back in October 2011, where he raps, "F a Tuka gang, I let this Ruger bang." This would single-handedly birth the trend of smoking dead ops, as well as further igniting the feud between STL EBT and O-Block. But just 3 months later, the war would intensify and STL would lose yet another one of their members to gunfire, once again, someone who was extremely close to KI. Tutu, real name Carlton Archer, is a member from Jaro City, which is a gang closely affiliated with STL. Tutu and KI were very close and thought to have been romantically involved with one another. Once again, someone who KI held close to her heart would ultimately end up losing their life to the streets. On the night of the 10th of November, Tutu was found dead in an alley on the 6200 block of South Eberhard Avenue with multiple gunshot wounds. After his death, Tutu would become a legend in his hood and the drill culture, and his fans have often mourned his death on social media. FBG Duck would take to Facebook that very same night, implying that he intended to avenge Tutu's death, regardless of being on house arrest. KI also shared her heartbreak, claiming to have read Tutu's obituary every night before going to sleep. Due to the social media activity of their rivals, it's believed that O-Block's close ally, the Crew 600, were responsible for this murder, specifically one member called C-Day. His Twitter activity after the murder shows the extent that he would go to mock Jaro City and seemingly admit responsibility for the shooting, tweeting over a year after the murder that he would dig up Tutu and re-kill him. And the same day as this tweet, C-Day would also post, claiming that he enjoys killing so much, comparing it to the feeling of sex. Many theorize that his Twitter name, Tutu Shots, is in fact a play on words, referring to C-Day having killed Tutu. But the disrespect went even further beyond music or tweets, as it's alleged that 600 members would even shoot up Tutu's funeral, with FBG Butter explaining the story behind the funeral shooting in an interview with Corporate Cartel Media, where he confirmed that this indeed happened, even claiming that Jaro members got locked into the church by the authorities who were trying to take their guns.
Look, you gotta think like this, right? Tutu funeral was on their shit, right? At Pastor Brooks Church, right? Got blew at. It was a shootout, right?
At the funeral?
At the funeral. It got wild on their way going to the funeral. Bumped his, but got wild, you know, right? Pastor Brooks let the police barricade us in his church and asked us for our guns.
Just like Tuka and OD, Tutu's death was a major loss for Jaro City, and it spawned the new name, Tutu Gang. One of Jakira's very first tweets would be her repping Tutu Gang. But it was clear after Tutu's death that this incident had affected KI in a major way, as she even had Carlton Tutu Archer's nickname tattooed onto her arms, with another nickname for him being Carlton Cashout. But strangely, although KI and Tutu were said to have been romantically involved, it appeared that KI actually begun dating Tutu's sister after his death. A video surfaced online where KI can actually be seen in the orange flirting with Tutu's sister. Ultimately, KI was left heartbroken once again after Tutu died, and once again, her crew would seek revenge. Just 3 months later, it would appear they got what they were looking for, as another member of O Block would be murdered, and KI would be a prime suspect after bragging about the hit to the whole world. Sheroid was the brother of famed FBG Duck shooter C Murder. At 6:47 PM on February the 6th, 2012, Sheroid Liggins of O Block was discovered with a gunshot wound to the head at the 6400 block of South King Drive, just outside of Parkway Gardens, aka O Block. He was in the hospital fighting for his life for around 4 days when he was pronounced dead on February the 20th, 2012 at Stroger Hospital. Nobody was caught for this crime, but KI made some incriminating tweets suggesting that Boss Trail of Tukaville was responsible. During this time, she began engaging in massive tirades to anger her ops, tweeting things such as BT made Sheroid squad, BT doing hits on the wick, hit Sheroid in his neck, and mentioning a red beam knocking Sheroid off the map, with the aforementioned red beam actually being featured in a music video with Lil J and FBG Duck dissing Chief Keef, a track titled Critical that was released just months after this murder happened. The title of the song possibly being a reference to how Sheroid was in critical condition for some time before he actually passed away. Clearly surrounded by death at this time, KI would also tweet about her dead ex-boyfriend and friend, Carlton Tutu Archer, saying that she would read his obituary every night before sleep. Boss Trail would also once tweet that he bet O Block remembers that red beam, which is pretty crazy considering that he is indeed the person alleged to have killed Sheroid with a gun that had a red beam on it from all the way across the street that was shown off in that critical music video. Now, another police document was released years after this case, with 4 offenders actually being reported as suspects, but the police eventually landed on the idea that only 2 offenders were involved, with the investigators attempting to identify 2 people with the nicknames of DJ or Day Day and Butter as those responsible for the shooting, with internet detectives saying DJ could be one of Boss Trail's best friends Dutchie, who also went by the name DJ and could be seen in this photo with Boss Trail from 2012, although the police were more focused on someone unrelated to Boss Trail and KI with the initials DJ, apparently named Dayton Johnson. From these documents, Butter also was thought by internet detectives to be KI's older brother FBG Butter, who is indeed known to hang around Boss Trail. Detectives were also told that the shooter was named Tutu, but couldn't identify Tutu either. Now, Tutu coming up is kind of interesting to note because KI's ex, Tutu, was already deceased by the time of this shooting, but it would still make sense for someone to confuse Tutu as the killer, as this murder took place on February the 16th, 2012. Apparently, the ballistics from this case actually matched up with another homicide that the police believe was actually done by Carlton Tutu Archer before he died, with that hit apparently being carried out by Tutu along with another one of KI's friends, Rason Lil B Shaw, on the 26th of December 2011. But anyway, despite seemingly getting some momentary revenge, just months later, KI would experience yet another major loss when her close friend, 13-year-old Taekwon Tyler, was killed whilst leaving a party. Taekwon's death, just like Tuka and OD, was massive for Jaro City and even spawned its own break-off set from Jaro City named Taekwon World. KI would change her Twitter handle to the infamous nickname Taekwon Assassin, possibly indicating that she was indeed seeking to assassinate people as revenge for her fallen friend. By now, KI had lost at least 3 close friends, as well as her own father to gun violence. She was ultimately groomed from the tender age of 12, learning the way of the streets, and after these tit-for-tat killings, there was really no going back for her. King Von and KI's first interaction on Twitter was around September the 25th, 2012, with King Von alluding to an incident where he'd apparently beaten up KI on a train. KI would reply that she'd only suffered minor injuries compared to the ops who she'd hit with 40 caliber bullets to the face. Ki the next day suggests that she shot up Von or someone he knew the very next day. He then replied, questioning whether Ki is a gangster or a bitch, questioning her role in the gang war as she was a female, with her replying, putting it on Tuka's life that she was indeed a gangster. As mentioned previously, Ki's struggles with her gender identity was indeed a big challenge to her, and comments like this from Von likely cut deep. 4 days later, King Von would ask Ki why she was shouting out her hood as he never saw her when he was searching for ops in the area, and Ki would reply saying that Von could die like White White, a friend that Von saw get gunned down and would later rap about on his song called Demon, saying witnessing this murder is what turned Von into a demon. Now this comment would anger Von so much that he threatened to kill Ki and said that she better kill him first if she wants to live. Strangely, he then replies to Ki claiming that she needs some D, possibly indicating that he wanted to sleep with her, and again prodding her with a personal jab that struck right at the heart of her sexuality. Judging by Von's personality and antics in his life, it's possible that he actually admired Ki and respected her killer reputation. But on the other hand, Von was always a massive troll. Now Ki would sternly reply to him saying F you, but maybe Von wasn't trolling. That same day, Ki asked her followers to retweet if they think she looks good, and Von retweeted it. The next month, Ki would make a tweet claiming that she had beaten up Lil Scud from O Block, and she says that someone should let Von know that she was tough and wasn't someone he should be messing with. King Von would respond to this, saying that he thought she was tough and that he actually liked her. Although after hitting on Ki, Von doubted that she really beat his friend up, which prompted Ki to say that when she beat up Lil Scud, he didn't even claim his hood O Block when she pressed him. King Von's sister, Lil B, then chimed in on the conversation, claiming to have been present during the fight, and she says that it was her that told Scud not to say where he was from to not further instigate any violence in the situation. She then said that Ki didn't beat him up, but also somewhat attempted to neutralize the situation by saying that everybody knew Ki wasn't a lame nor someone to be messed with Ki calling Scud a bitch and making fun of him for not even punching her back. All of this would lead King Von to really see just how wild Ki could be, and causing him to say that he thought he was falling in love with her, with Ki responding simply, gay ass. Now, I know this seems like a joke, but this is actually quite interesting, because if Ki is calling Von gay for liking her, perhaps this is a sign that at this point, Ki was actually identifying as a man. Or perhaps Von's comments about finding her attractive really cut Ki deep, as perhaps she felt that she had to abandon her feminine identity to fit in with her gang members. But it's also possible that beneath this facade, Ki did long to be wanted by someone like Von, who was considered to be one of the more handsome members of the opposing gang. That's a big no diddy on that one. But anyway, judging by Von's reply, it's safe to assume that he was indeed trolling at this point, as he would go on to call her wifey, later promising to treat her right. Now Ki seemed to actually get a kick at the concept of hooking up with someone from the opposition's hood and just tweeted LMAO at this wild turn of events. Now Von would use this instance to start regularly referring to Ki as his wifey and getting playful responses from Ki as tweets went by, with Von also saying that he has Ki on his mind a lot and that he even told his sister that he eventually wanted to marry her. Many years later, someone on the anonymous image messaging board 4chan claimed to have hacked Ki's private DMs on Twitter, and if you line it up with this timeline of events, it seems that Von really did ask Ki if she wanted to hook up in the private DMs, although it's pretty clear that Ki would have every reason to be paranoid about Von's true intentions, with Ki asking Von straight up if he wanted to kill her, and Von letting Ki know that there were in fact people from his area that did want her dead, but he wouldn't do that to her because he thought she was cool as hell. Von then asked her if she would ever stop gangbanging, to which she replied never. She then asked Von the same thing, where he said he would probably die living this lifestyle, and she said she was thinking the same about herself. Now, an exchange like this really shows their odd compatibility and relatable mindsets that could have actually caused Von to maybe feel like he really related to Ki. I mean, they're a match made in heaven. Just imagine a different timeline where Ki and Von ran off into the sunset together, catching bodies state to state like true romance. But anyway, Ki would also tell Von that the ops must have thought pretty highly of her threat level if they were so obsessed with trying to kill her, and Von would reply saying that they weren't just thirsty for her, but they were more looking to kill anyone in general. But he did think of killing her when he saw her once, but the police were nearby. Von would go on to explain if he really wanted Ki dead, he would have shot her on the train when he beat her up, because he actually did in fact have his gun on him that day, with Ki responding that it was pretty much on site now that he'd admitted that he thought of killing her previously and that she was STL or die. Now Von seemingly didn't think she'd respond to his statement so seriously and asked her why she was acting so tough all the time, but at the end of the day, Ki thought Von was an op from the other block, so there should be nothing else he should have expected. This left each of them angry at each other, with them publicly tweeting insults in one another's direction. Von then began to relish in the online beef, while KI seemingly wanted to take things outside to be settled in the streets, with KI saying she was on her way when Von made a remark that he had his ops scared at a corner store, as well as tweeting him days after, clearly letting him know that she was looking for him, saying, "Where you at?" More leaks of Twitter DMs would emerge from October the 14th, just one day after the death of Modell McCambry, with KI trying to get revenge and find someone from O Block. Now this is incredibly personal when you consider the fact that Modell was one of KI's ex-boyfriends, and along with the rumor that it was King Von who was personally responsible for killing Modell. KI would want revenge, and she was on Twitter begging someone to come outside. KI would poke fun at O Block, saying, "Y'all just got one," referring to Modell, "and now you're just gonna hide indoors for the rest of the month?" And she would even attempt to set up an agreed upon duel-style shootout right out of a Wild West film. KI would invite Von and his partner in crime, the notorious O Block killer Sheroid, to come outside. KI later that day would claim that she and her people walked all over O Block looking for them and didn't see a soul. Von would then respond basically saying that they were too busy right now, but would go and find her and her people sometime later. KI would say that Von was scared, and Von would just laugh it off. A few days later, Von would DM KI, telling her he would only meet her if she would wear a dress and let her hair down, because as he put it, it would be worth risking his life to maybe get a piece of that. Again, this was just another foul message that showed that Von was really willing to hit KI where it hurt and use her sexuality and gender to try and draw her out and offend her. Now, KI and Von would go back and forth publicly after that, building up an insane beef. KI would tweet that she was going to the store and Von would tell her not to, but she would say that she never sees him when she goes out anyway. Von would remind her that he did in fact see her when he beat her up on the train, with her saying he's been hiding ever since. He said maybe every time she goes to his area looking for him, he's gone to her area looking for her, and she would remind him of the time 2 years prior when FBG Butter had apparently beaten Von up on the bus. People from O Block would chime in saying that they'd kill her and making fun of her for being masculine. She would say she wanted to see Von face to face, and he would say, "No, Kyra, you really don't." On October the 29th, 2012, Von would famously tweet that he's not been hanging with his best friend Sheroid because Sheroid had accumulated too many bodies on the streets, and Von needs to catch up on murders to match his friend's kill count, tweeting, "Give me till Friday." And then, the very next day, Von would allegedly murder a rival by the name of P5, or Crack, from Jaro City. Word on the street was that King Von and O Block J Money had carried out the murder, according to FBG Duck's mother.
J Money killed Crack, cause Crack was her best friend.
Days after the murder of P5, KI started beefing with J Money, as she likely heard the same rumors as to those two being responsible, with J Money clapping back, calling KI a gay bitch, and with KI dissing J Money's dead friend Sheroid. And J Money would go on to diss KI's deceased ex Modell too. KI would later tweet that she needed a lift to the funeral of P5, and Von would mockingly tell her to take the bus. Von at this point made it pretty obvious on Twitter that he had participated in the murder of P5 and was now straight up mocking the ones who were mourning the loss. But then, the next day, King Von would claim that he was trying to get KI on the phone all day and that he thought her voice was sexy. Even after Von went to jail in 2013 for unlawful possession of a firearm, Von's sister would reach out to KI on Von's behalf because apparently Von wanted to invite KI to visit him in jail. Von's sister really attempted to show KI that his attempts were genuine in these tweets. Whilst Von was in jail, KI would be spending her time reminding people that her and her members from 63rd were indeed upping the score, feeding into rumors that at this point she and her friends had bodies in the double digits. Von's sister would get frustrated at this point, reminding KI of a time they had apparently fought and KI pulled Von's sister's hair, and when KI fired a gun, all she did was shoot in the air. Von's sister had clearly had enough of KI at this point, as she said that she would see her again sometime on 63rd. Just a few months later in 2013, KI would take to Twitter to show that she was bloodthirsty and possibly broadcasting her next body. Just one day before the death of Jerome J Money Wood, she would show her eagerness to catch a body on Twitter, asking who she should slide on. Now, J Money was a beloved O Block member, as well as being affiliated with Lil Durk's OTF crew and the wider BDs, or Black Disciples. He was a popular fixture in his area and beloved by many of the most famous and serious street players. In the early morning of September the 2nd, 2013, KI was also coordinating with a few others on Twitter, so we know she was likely hanging out with a group of people and didn't act alone. On that day, September the 2nd, 2013, KI would tweet that she was looking for an op in traffic. She claims that she was ready to slide and then ends up being possibly present for the murder of J Money, as J Money would be shot in the head and killed on the afternoon of Monday the 2nd of September 2013. And in the early morning of September the 3rd, 2013, before she likely even went to sleep, KI was tweeting that somebody was sent to shoot her and now the BDs have a dead driller using the hashtag BDK for Black Disciple Killer. But during Von's time in jail through 2013, K.I. would be seen online dissing O-Block and celebrating her revenge at the deaths of O.D. and J Money, and saying that J Money had dissed Tuka and now he's dead like O.D. Perry. While the violence was playing out in the streets, the authorities were always one step behind, but police did indeed have it out for K.I. and her friends. K.I.'s mother would even say in an interview that the police once picked up Jakira and made her get out of the car in the middle of O-Block.
Yeah, they dropped her off in O-Block before. They literally like picked her up off the block, with her rode her around for a minute, but when they took her in O-Block and they told her get out the car. And she like, man, I'm not getting out in here, you know, and they made her get out. And of course, you know what I'm saying, they knew she ain't had nothing on her because they searched her before she got in the car. And she like, I'm not finna get, so she ended up getting out. So once she got out, you know what I'm saying, I ain't gonna lie, she took off. She took off running back to the block.
Pretty much replicating that famous scene from the beginning of GTA San Andreas, where Officer Tenpenny throws CJ out of the police car in the middle of the hood of their rivals, the Ballers.
Oh shit, here we go again.
But K.I. was becoming somewhat of a legend in Chicago at this time, and her reputation was certainly beginning to spread. K.I. was even reportedly offered money to do hits during this time, adding credibility to her Twitter handle, Taekwon Assassin, a name that she apparently took after the murder of her little cousin Taekwon. According to DMs which later leaked, she was asking for $10,000 up front to kill the Chicago rapper G Herbo, known then as Lil Herb, with her boasting in these DMs about other hits she may have done, saying how it should be known that she doesn't play around. And the playing customer confirmed that she had been a part of the hit that killed O.D. Perry before she got paranoid and asked him to delete the DMs. When King Von was released from jail in 2014, he would tweet at K.I. asking if she'd missed him, with her responding, "When are we meeting up?" along with 4 gun emojis. Von would express disappointment that K.I. never visited him in jail. Now this was one of the first things he actually did when he got out of jail. He tweeted her twice before he'd even tweeted Chief Keef or any of his other friends. And K.I. would get to immediately boasting about the death of J Money, saying how does it feel to lose a homie while you were locked up, even going as far as to retweet King Von's RIP J Money tweet the next day. It seems that K.I. almost wanted to confess to Von that she had a hand in the killing, saying she wished she could dig up Von's friend and shoot him again, kind of admitting to the murder. Von would slap back, saying rest in piss to Crack and Modell, with Von tweeting days after about how he would no longer be forgiving ops, even if they were females. Von clearly had enough of bantering with K.I. at this point, as well as tweeting about how he wanted to catch a female op with gun emojis. He wanted to let it be known that K.I. was now his biggest target, and Von and K.I. would tweet at each other much less in 2014, possibly to reduce the paper trail for when they would finally run into each other in the streets. But Von would go on to tweet much more vaguely about wanting to catch female ops. And it would almost seem as if they were still reading each other's Twitters, because they would tweet very similar insults towards each other on certain days. Sadly, just 1 month later, the beef between King Von and K.I. would finally make it past the computer screen. But in the midst of all this madness, K.I. would suffer once again a major loss of one of her closest friends, but this time at the hands of the police, not rival gangsters. On the 29th of March 2014, a prominent STL EBT member by the name of Lil B was being chased by the police in the 6200 block of South Rhodes Avenue. Police would claim Lil B, real name Russ Onshaw, pointed a gun at them, prompting the officer to open fire, killing Lil B. A harrowing video of the aftermath of the killing would circulate online following the incident. Later, local news would show the aftermath of the shooting, with angry crowds gathering who saw this as another example of police using excessive force against the black community.
He was running through the alley with no gun or nothing, because he just left us. Police shot him unjustified. Too many times in his back. He ain't do nothing, man.
After his death, allies of Lil B would share their memories, with many describing how he was a menace and had even killed numerous ops. Lil B's death impacted K.I. massively, and once again, she used Twitter to memorialize her lost friend, changing her handle to No Surrender Lil B and adding a cover photo of the duo together. In an interview with Chantel, K.I.'s mother, she details the lasting effect Lil B's death took on K.I.
Like the final week of her life, I was seeing something in her that I hadn't been seeing, you know, and I would ask her, what's wrong? You know, you look like you lost your best friend. She did lose a friend.
With Chantel explaining how she saw a look in K.I.'s eyes, almost as if her soul was leaving her at this time.
Up until that Friday, you know, I seen something in my baby's eyes. You know, I can't explain what it was, but it was just this look like her soul was leaving before she was actually gone.
Unfortunately, just weeks later, it was K.I. who would fall victim to murder, and most shockingly, at the hands of the very man who had claimed he'd been planning to kill her for years. On the morning of April the 11th, 2014, K.I. took to Twitter to shout out her fallen friend Lil B. It would seem that all the sudden losses of her friends was taking a huge toll on K.I.'s mental health, as she would share that she had seen too many friends in caskets, and eerily tweeting, "In the end, we all die." It's as if she knew something was around the corner, and presumably she would go about her day as usual. STL was set to celebrate Boss Trell's birthday, but by the afternoon, disaster would strike. K.I. was in her usual stomping grounds of St. Lawrence and Eberhart, specifically the 6400 block of South Eberhart Avenue. At around 3:30 p.m, K.I. was standing with two other men when a man approached and let off several shots at the group. K.I. apparently stumbled onto some nearby steps after she was shot. K.I. would suffer multiple gunshot wounds to her upper body and was pronounced dead by 5:43 p.m. She was shot around 9 times. Two others were also injured in the shooting, including a 33-year-old man who was shot in the foot and a 19-year-old who was hit but managed to escape, later receiving medical attention. Rumours begun to spread that K.I. was killed by King Von and other members of O-Block. If true, it would seem that Von really did have it out for K.I. ever since he was released from prison, and after all the online banter and teasing, he still considered K.I. as an enemy and ended up murdering her in cold blood. But even more chilling when you consider the fact that he was also believed to have killed Modal McCambry, who was in a relationship with K.I. in 2010. In the days following April the 11th, members and affiliates of O-Block begun shouting out Von on Twitter, giving him praise for the murder and being a savage. People like Lil Reese and Boss Top. And Von himself was not shy to brag about the murder, taking to Twitter soon after the shooting to hint at his involvement. Just one day later, he tweeted, "You wouldn't believe the stuff I do," and vowing to kill his ops as he's taken so many losses, as well as shouting out Stretch Gang and his closest friend T. Roy, with this tweet asking, "Doesn't anybody miss King Von?" as he was in prison for the last year. Being this provocative about the murder so publicly, it was a miracle that he was never charged at the time, but it does seem that Von was arrested for the murder on April the 24th, but somehow he was later released. In the years following, further signs point towards Von being the gunman, such as Mama Duck, FBG Duck's mother, appearing on Say Cheese TV and admitting that she believed King Von killed K.I.
But it's a lot of people who are saying that King Von allegedly, he murdered K.I. And this is just YouTube, you know, the blog talk, the street talk.
Well, a lot of that information is accurate, put it like that. I ain't gonna tell you which one is which, but a lot of that information is so accurate, so whoever they getting their resources from, they hitting it on the nail.
When King Von blew up and later became a famous rapper, he would drop numerous lyrics that seemingly referred to him having killed a woman. However, nothing makes the theory of Von killing K.I. as concrete as in 2021 when the Chicago police released paperwork claiming that King Von was indeed the main suspect in the murders of both K.I. and Modal McCambry, with many suggesting that Von may well have been charged with the murder had he still been alive in 2021. Sadly, by this point, Von had already lost his life when he was shot dead in November 2020 after starting a fistfight with another dangerous gangster rapper. Sadly, K.I.'s death marked just another murder statistic in the ongoing war within Chicago. Although she may have been involved in a deadly gang and is possibly connected to several shootings and possible murders, it's hard not to empathize with K.I.'s story, as before she'd even made it to 1 year old, the streets had begun picking away those people closest to her, almost setting her up to fail. Before the age of 18, K.I. had lost her father, Tuka, Tutu, Model, and Lil B, and these are just the names of the people that were closest to her specifically. All of her brothers were involved in gangs, and she was herself likely groomed from as young as 12 years old to be involved in the streets. And for all of this happened just for her to be killed in cold blood at just age 17. She hadn't even become an adult before she was killed, leaving her mother to grieve yet another family member lost to senseless violence.
I'm just gonna miss her presence. She was a very, very beautiful, well-known, lovely girl. I love her, and I'm gonna fight for her to have justice.
But K.I.'s death was not in vain. Her stories left behind a legacy that's still felt by many to this day and has been mass reported in the media. In 2014, when drill music was still in its early stages and the world was really yet to have found out about the true horrors occurring on the streets of Chicago, the international media would pay close attention to K.I.'s unique story, using it as an example to really share the extreme circumstances of the Chicago streets, explaining to the world how it is that a young, innocent female can be turned into a gang assassin provided the right circumstances. Outlets such as the Daily Beast would report K.I.'s story just weeks after her death, naming the article Chicago's gun-toting gang girl Lil Snoop. It seemed that K.I.'s story really caught the attention of the whole world, as even a UK-based newspaper, the Daily Mail, would report her story in April 2014, again comparing her story to the fictional Lil Snoop character from The Wire. The Chicago Sun-Times would make a detailed article dedicated to K.I.'s story, which also named her as a 17-year-old female assassin, with a strong sense of fascination that a girl could thrive in the male-dominated world of Chicago gang violence, with that article proudly explaining how she had called herself a hit woman, with the article even going further to explain KI's harrowing story of loss and violence. However, in 2019, KI's story received perhaps its biggest coverage yet, as the A&E cable TV network chose to release a full documentary on her life, titled Secret Life of a Gang Girl, Untold Story.
It's uncommon for young women to be shooters in gangs.
Shakira was infamous because Shakira was a killer.
Allegedly killing up to 17 people by the time she was 17 years old.
Shakira Barnes, a gangster girl who wielded power with a pistol and a smartphone.
And although that documentary seemed to be high budget and informative, there does seem to be some issues with their research, as A&E would seemingly pin 17 murders on KI within the first minute of the documentary without really backing it up with facts. But easily, the worst and most haunting part of this whole documentary would be the fact that they went to O-Block, interviewing none other than King Von himself, the man who we now know allegedly murdered KI, but back then, the documentary makers seemed to have absolutely no clue that they were talking to the real killer. This disrespectful move would be a slap in the face to KI's family, and to make matters worse, throughout King Von's interview, it's clear that he is completely trolling and joking about his interactions with KI, making it seem as if they were indeed a real couple, and pretending that he was upset and lonely after she died, almost as if he wanted to still have the last laugh. Von would quite literally laugh in the documentary when the messages between him and KI were read back to him.
Yeah, I was trying to first. I was like, damn, you and shit.
The exact text was something along the lines of, when it's all over with, I'm gonna get up in you or something. Does that sound about right?
That sound raw, so yeah, I'll be saying raw. Yeah, I probably did say that.
But regardless, KI's life story clearly struck a chord with many people around the world, and it just goes to show you that Chicago is truly an unforgiving place that can transform even a sweet, young, innocent girl into a fearsome shooter. In April 2024, just days short of it being 10 years since KI's murder, her mother Chantel would appear for an interview on DJU TV, and in the interview, they would discuss KI's early life and the impact her death had on her family as well as the city at large. But they would also discuss who may well have been responsible for the murder, with Chantel explaining that everybody knew who killed KI and that the public wasn't aware until the FBI documents were released, proving that King Von did in fact kill KI.
From jump, I had knew who it was. The internet and the world ain't know who it's supposed to be in, allegedly, until FBI dropped the files, public record.
She would even share that she forgave King Von before his death, showing an incredible amount of strength as a mother to be able to heal from the shocking murder of her daughter.
I honestly had, before the untimely death of the person, I honestly had forgave the person in my heart. I ain't mad at nobody. It's a sad, situation and, circumstance, but it's life. I didn't feel me holding hatred in my heart what helped me to heal.
She would then shed light on King Von appearing in the Gang Girl documentary. Chantel admits that she was angered by Von's demeanor in the documentary and how he laughed about the situation. And she also explained that A&E didn't even try once to contact her about the show.
The documentary, the person was in the documentary.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, then now that part kind of off a little bit.
That had to tweak you out,
that
right?
Now, I ain't gonna lie, that right there, that part, it kind of, because it was like at the time, a person was laughing about it, trying to act like they wasn't involved in it. It was just like, now that part, because A&E ain't reach out to me about it.
Okay.
So that's why I wasn't involved. So whoever they talked to, that's who they reached out to. But my number ain't changed in 15 years, so I don't know why not. So at first I didn't want to watch it because I was like, you know what I'm saying? So it took me a while, but I watched it all the way through. And when I did, and I synced that portion of it, I just was like, you got to be bullshitting me.
In the end, KI's legacy as a teenage female assassin with 17 bodies at 17 was certainly embellished. However, from looking closely at her story, whilst it's not completely proven with a conviction, it seems pretty apparent to me that she may well have been a killer, and her name has certainly been connected to at least 3 murders. But at the heart of her story is something much deeper. A young girl who got lost in the dark, masculine world of gang violence amid a struggle to fit in and a larger-than-life personality, which ironically allowed her to thrive as a gang member, but also made her a huge target for her opposition. She was particularly unlucky to have become the main target of King Von, someone whose name has become synonymous in Chicago drill for being one of the most ruthless and brutal gang members ever to hail from inside the gates of O-Block. KI's story is ultimately a tragedy that shows that while a petite girl could indeed find her place in the male-dominated world of gang conflict, at the end of the day, woman or man, you're ultimately dealing in a world that only has 2 guaranteed outcomes: death or life in prison. As KI's tweets seem to suggest, she was tortured by the deaths of those around her that she loved the most. Whether Tuka, Modell, Taekwon, or Lil B, her life was rife with pain and suffering. and in the same world, she also seemingly dished out death and suffering onto her enemies. The only solace that we can now take is that she's no longer with us and her spirit is at peace, and what little comfort her family can get from the fact that her alleged killer too could not escape the dead-end road that is the gang lifestyle. If Von was still alive, he would likely have faced justice for numerous murders he played a role in, including but not limited to those of KI and FBG Duck. But in the end, both KI and Von became victims of the streets, a life they were both born into with no choice. So if you want to take anything away from this story, it's that the streets really are a dead end. Whether you're a demon who likes to take lives, or a victim whose life gets taken, in the end, you have to face the music in the afterlife for the deeds you did while you were here.